He served his country. He wore the uniform with pride. But one package thrown at his chest like trash ignited a nationwide reckoning. When a black veteran was humiliated on his own porch by a careless delivery driver, the insult went viral. What started as a moment of quiet pain turned into a storm of outrage, lawsuits, and redemption. This is the true story of how one man's porch became a battlefield for dignity, and how the nation finally heard the flag cry again. He hurled the box at me, didn't even slow down. A brown cardboard package, barely taped shut, spiraled through the air like a forgotten thought and slammed into my chest. I staggered back, gripping my cane, breath caught in my throat. Not because of the impact, not because I'm frail, but because of the look he gave me. Like I wasn't a man, like I was nothing. "Catch, old man," the delivery driver muttered with a twisted smirk before walking off, earbuds in his uniform stained with sweat, his face hidden beneath a ball cap that read, "A Z-Box Express." Behind him in the passenger seat of the van, a second man, maybe a trainee, laughed. They didn't care. Not about who I was. Not about what I'd done. And they certainly didn't care that the package had my Purple Heart in it. I'm Elijah Boone, age 72, Vietnam vet, retired postman, widower, and for the last 5 years, I've been invisible. I live alone in a modest home on the east end of Elmwood, a neighborhood that used to hum with backyard cookouts and kids racing bikes. Now the fences are higher, the neighbors quieter, and the delivery drivers don't knock. They throw. Especially when you're black and wear your veteran's cap like a crown you didn't ask for. I didn't want to fight. I never do. I chose peace long ago. But that package, they didn't know what was in it. I had ordered a custom display case, walnut frame, velvet backing, to finally hang my Purple Heart and Bronze Star beside a faded black and white photo of my late wife, Irene. She was the one who told me to stop hiding them away. "They're not reminders of war," she said. "They're reminders that you came home, and that you lived. And now, that case was split open glass, shattered my medals exposed in the middle of the sidewalk, tarnished, like they didn't mean a thing." I bent down to gather them, my knees shaking more from rage than age. But my hands paused. Because from across the street I saw him, a young boy, maybe 11, holding his phone up. Recording. That night I barely slept. I tried calling the delivery company. Got placed on hold for 47 minutes. Then transferred. Then disconnected. I tried again the next morning. Spoke to someone named Hannah, who sounded like she was reading from a manual written by people who had never been disrespected in their life. "I'm sorry for your inconvenience, sir," she said. Inconvenience. No. War was inconvenient. Watching friends die in a jungle far from home was inconvenient. This was disrespect. By day 3, the video had already gone viral. I didn't know it at first. I don't spend much time online. But the doorbell rang, and when I opened it, a reporter stood on my porch with a cameraman. A young woman with bright eyes and a trembling voice. She had seen the clip. The way the box had hit me. The way I bent down in slow-motion medals glinting in the sun, heartbroken. "Sir, I'm sorry to disturb you," she said. "But the internet is furious. People want to know who you are." And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel invisible. That evening, I sat on my porch under the buzzing glow of the porch light. The stars were beginning to poke through the indigo sky, and cicadas hummed in a rhythm only the South knows. Across the street I saw the boy again, the one who filmed it. His name was Marcus. He came over slowly, nervously, holding his phone like a peace offering. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. "No," I said gently. "You did something right." His eyes lit up. "I just thought, if people saw, they might say something." "They did," I said. "They're saying plenty." Within 48 hours, my front yard had turned into a makeshift memorial. Veterans from other wars, Afghanistan, Iraq, Korea, they showed up. They brought flags, medals, stories. A woman named Teresa, who lost her father in Desert Storm, hugged me without asking. A man with one leg and a prosthetic arm saluted me so sharply, I stood up and returned it, spine stiff like I was back in uniform. They weren't here just because I got disrespected. They were here because they recognized something the world had forgotten: honor. But not everyone was happy. From the corner house where the HOA president lived, I saw blinds flutter. Her name was Carol Redmond. Blonde, impeccable hair. Power walked every morning at 6 a.m. sharp. She didn't like disruption. At the HOA meeting the following week, I was told politely that flags, signs, and gatherings on my lawn violated neighborhood aesthetics. I looked around that room at faces who'd lived across the street from me for years and had never once said my name. "I bled for this country," I said. "And now, because people finally see me, you want me to shut up." They said it wasn't personal, that it was about rules. But I knew the truth. It was always personal when you looked like me. Still, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't curse. I just nodded, because something had started, and they couldn't stop it. Not now. That night, Marcus knocked on my door again. He handed me a USB drive. "What's this?" I asked. "The rest of the video," he whispered. "There's audio." What the driver really said after he thought no one was listening. I played it, and I froze. "I ain't saluting no washed-up war junkie," the voice on the video said. "Let him choke on his medals." I stared at the screen. Then I looked at my reflection in the window. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something rise in me. Not rage, not sadness. Resolve. They thought I was done. They thought I would take the blow quietly. But I've been to war, and I know the sound of a battle cry. And this wasn't over. I stood before the television remote in hand-heart pounding. The clip had been shared again, this time on the national news. It was no longer just Marcus's handheld recording. Someone, maybe the reporter, maybe a veteran group, had sent it to every major outlet in the country. And now millions were seeing what had happened on my street. A simple moment, a violent gesture, a quiet man absorbing yet another insult. Except I wasn't just a man anymore. I was the symbol, and that terrified them. But not everyone was cheering. The backlash began almost as fast as the support. People online, nameless faces hiding behind usernames, said I was faking it. That I staged the whole thing for attention. That maybe I provoked the delivery driver. That if I had been polite, none of it would have happened. Another old man playing victim one comment read, and then it escalated. "You should have stayed in the jungle, Boomer. Veteran, prove it. Where's your discharge papers, Gramps?" They didn't want the truth. They wanted silence. I sat on the porch that evening, staring at the American flag I'd raised again, after years of keeping it folded in the closet. The wind moved it like it still meant something. But inside, I was questioning everything. Had I done the right thing by letting the story go public? Had I invited chaos onto a street that barely spoke to me before? Then came the knock. Heavy, sharp, authoritative. I opened the door to see two men in suits badges tucked against their belts. "Mr. Boone," one of them said. "We're with Easy Box Express. Corporate sent us. We'd like to speak with you about the incident." I motioned for them to come inside, but something about their smiles, it wasn't concern. It was strategy. They didn't sit. They stood tall, hands folded, faces tense. "We'd appreciate it if you'd allow us to resolve this quietly," the taller one said. "Our driver is a young man. He made a mistake. He threw a package at me," I said, "with my medals inside, and we're prepared to compensate you for the emotional distress," the other added, sliding a white envelope onto my kitchen table. $10,000. $10,000? Blood money. Silence money. "You think that makes it right?" I said, not touching the envelope. "We think the world's gotten too loud," one of them said this time without the fake smile. "And some stories don't need more attention than they already have." I didn't reply. I just stood, walked to the front door, and opened it. They got the message. That night I pulled out the USB drive again. I listened to the driver's words over and over. "I ain't saluting no washed-up war junkie." Let him choke on his medals. I watched the moment the box hit my chest. I watched myself bend down slow, careful, like I was gathering pieces of something more fragile than glass. And then I made my decision. I was going public. Marcus helped me. He had a YouTube channel, barely a dozen subscribers, but the kid knew how to edit. He took the footage, added captions, and then he did something brilliant. He layered my voice over it. He'd asked me to record what I felt, what I'd never said out loud, so I did. I didn't come home from war to be spit on by silence. I wore a uniform this country gave me, and now I'm wearing scars it forgot about. But I'm still standing. I always will be. He titled it, "He Threw a Package, but Hit a Nation's Nerve." And within hours it had 2 million views. Suddenly the tides shifted. Reporters, veteran groups, celebrities. They weren't just sharing the story anymore. They were outraged. Justice for Boone began trending. The driver's identity leaked. People demanded his termination. Others demanded corporate accountability. And behind the scenes that HOA President Carol Redmond was panicking. Because in the video's final frames, there she was captured behind her curtain, staring with disdain. At the next HOA meeting, the room was packed. Not just residents, journalists, veterans, lawyers. I stood, dressed in my old uniform jacket. The medals pinned again, this time proudly. Carol tried to open with her agenda, but I raised my hand. "This is a community, not a kingdom," I said. "And if this place believes rules are more important than people, then maybe the rules need rewriting." Someone clapped, then another, and then the room roared. Carol banged her gavel, flustered. "Order. This isn't about politics." "No," I said, stepping forward. "It's about dignity, and that belongs to everyone, no matter how they look, how old they are, or whether their mailbox leans 2 inches too far." Later that night I received an unexpected message. It was from a woman named Evelyn James, civil rights attorney. She had served in the Navy herself. "I want to help you sue the delivery company," she said. "But I also want to do more. I want to help you expose the HOA discrimination, too." I sat back, stunned. "I'm not trying to burn it all down," I said. "No," she replied. "You're just lighting the path." Still, the pressure was rising. EasyBox Express released a statement. Polished. Cold. They condemned the driver, but refused to take responsibility. They framed it as an isolated incident. They painted me as a valued customer whose unfortunate experience is being addressed internally. No apology, no accountability, no justice. And then the final straw. Marcus's father came to my door, furious, pale. They fired my son from his school paper, he said. They said he violated privacy laws. Because he filmed you, I felt the blood drain from my face. They're punishing a kid for telling the truth, I whispered. They said it's causing unrest, that some parents complained. I gripped the edge of the doorframe, my knuckles white. That's when I knew this wasn't just about me anymore. They were silencing anyone who stood beside me, which meant it was time to stop being silent. I called Evelyn that night. I'm ready, I said, for what she asked, to fight back. The lawsuit was filed the next morning against EZ Box Express, against the individual driver, and, shockingly to everyone's horror, against Carol Redmond and the HOA board for creating a hostile environment that enabled discrimination. News broke within the hour, and the next time I opened my door, it wasn't with a cane. It was with a camera crew behind me. And this time, I was the one holding the mic. The courthouse steps felt higher than I remembered. Maybe it was age. Maybe it was nerves. Maybe it was the weight of everyone watching. They lined the sidewalk, dozens of them, clapping, holding flags, signs, photos. Strangers, veterans, students. Even Marcus stood among them, holding a handmade sign that read, "Respect is earned, and you earned it, Mr. Boone." I wanted to cry, but I didn't. I tightened my grip on my cane, buttoned my old uniform jacket, and walked into that courthouse like I had walked into jungle fog 5 decades earlier, uncertain, alert, but determined. Inside it was packed. The media filled the back rows. The HOA board sat stiffly in their Sunday best. Carol Redmond, lips thin as paper, clutched a binder like it was a lifeline. The EZ Box attorney looked like he'd come straight from Wall Street. The delivery driver, Jason Milner, slouched beside his lawyer, jaw-tight, eyes empty. But the seat to my right belonged to Evelyn. She leaned in. "You ready?" I nodded once. The judge was a tall black woman named Henrietta McCree, known across the state for her no-nonsense courtroom and icy glare. She banged the gavel. "Let's begin." The defense went first. EZ Box tried to spin a story Jason had been overworked. He'd been harassed before. He didn't mean to insult me. The package slipped. The video was taken out of context. He hadn't seen who he was delivering to. Lie, lie, and lie again. I sat there silent, listening to them twist truth like it was rubber. And then they brought up my past. Mr. Boone has a history of PTSD. Their attorney said voice smooth as oil, which may affect how he perceived the situation. Evelyn stood like fire had just touched her feet. Objection. Your Honor, this is victim blaming at its most disgusting. Sustained, Judge McCree snapped. Move on, counselor. Tread carefully. Then it was our turn. Evelyn was surgical. She called Marcus to the stand. He explained the video, his reason, his fear, his sense of right. The courtroom leaned forward as the footage played. The sound echoed across the room. Catch, old man. I ain't saluting no washed-up war junkie. You could feel the oxygen leave the space. Evelyn turned to Jason. Is that your voice? He shifted. Sweated. I don't recall. She pressed play again. Is that your voice? Silence. Then, yes, she called neighbors, veterans, even my former post office supervisor, a white man named Hank, who had fought beside me to get my medals replaced when they were stolen years ago. They each testified not just about what happened, but about who I was. Then she called me. I walked to the stand slowly but with purpose, and for the first time I spoke not to defend myself, but to define myself. I'm not suing for money, I said. I'm suing for memory, because this country forgets people like me until it needs us again. And when I was humiliated on my own porch holding my own medals, the pain wasn't in my body, it was in my soul. I looked directly at Jason. You didn't just throw a package. You threw away my dignity. I turned to the judge. I want it back. Cross-examination came like a storm. They asked why I didn't file a complaint earlier, why I wore my medals that day, whether I intended to provoke a reaction. I answered everything calmly, because truth doesn't panic. Then Evelyn made her move. She submitted evidence. Not just the video, but emails, anonymous tips from inside EasyBox. Managers had seen the footage days earlier. They'd laughed, forwarded it internally, called me Gramps the Snowflake in a group chat. And then the twist that shattered the courtroom. An email from Carol Redmond to the HOA board, dated 2 days after the video went viral. It read, "We need to find a way to keep this man quiet. I suggest we use zoning ordinances or aesthetics violations. He's inviting media attention that threatens the community's image." Judge McCree's jaw clenched. Evelyn let the silence speak for itself. The courtroom exploded. Gasps, murmurs, reporters whispering into phones. Carol stood up, trembling. That email was taken out of context. Judge McCree slammed the gavel. "Sit down, Mrs. Redmond." Carol sat, red-faced, eyes wild. Evelyn turned to the jury. This isn't just about a package. It's about a pattern, a system, a man being told he doesn't belong in the very country he served. And that is not justice. That is erasure. The judge called recess. As I stepped down, Marcus ran up and hugged me. "You told the truth, Mr. Boone," he whispered. "They can't ignore it anymore." Outside, the crowd had doubled. People were crying, cheering, saluting. A little girl handed me a drawing. It showed me in a uniform holding a flag. She'd written underneath it, "Thank you for being brave." Not just then, but now. The next day, we returned for the verdict. The jury deliberated for 5 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood tall. "We find in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Elijah Boone." I closed my eyes, exhaled, but he wasn't done. "We also recommend punitive damages against EasyBox Express for negligence and against the Elmwood HOA for discrimination and targeted harassment." Gasps. Judge McCree nodded satisfied. "Justice," she said, "is not a privilege. It is a right." Jason was fired. EasyBox was fined $1.2 million. Carol Redmond resigned within a week. The HOA board was overhauled by community vote. And me? I was offered a national speaking tour by the Veterans Coalition. But I didn't take it, because I had one more thing to do first. I went back to the same porch where it all began. I hammered the new plaque into place, framed, polished, shining. It read, "Elijah Boone, veteran, neighbor, American." It didn't happen all at once, but it happened. The silence, that heavy guarded hush that lived between the walls of our homes, began to crack. It started with the sound of a lawnmower, then a knock, then a question asked, not through gritted teeth or board meetings, but through a porch screen. "You doing all right, Mr. Boone?" It was Susan Markham, widow, 2 doors down. White woman, mid-60s. We'd nodded at each other for years without a single word exchanged. But today, she stepped into my yard with homemade muffins and eyes that couldn't hide her guilt. "I saw what they did to you," she said, "and I didn't speak up. I'm sorry." There's something humbling about watching people realize they've been silent too long. Even more humbling when they decide they won't be anymore. By the end of the week, my front lawn looked like a memorial and a movement all in one. Flags, letters. Veterans from across the state drove down just to shake my hand. One man, Mitchell Harris, pulled up in a wheelchair with an old camo jacket covered in patches. He said I didn't get a parade when I came home, just stairs. But I saw yours, and I felt seen. But it wasn't just veterans. Kids started riding bikes down my street again. Mothers waved. A woman I didn't even know left a note in my mailbox. Thank you for reminding us what respect looks like. It was strange how one act of hate had led to this cascade of kindness. But the story wasn't over. Not yet. Carol Redmond had resigned, yes, but her influence hadn't disappeared. A handful of HOA loyalists began whispering about turning the neighborhood back to normal. They called the media sensationalists. They said I had blown everything out of proportion, and then they did something that nearly undid me. They filed a petition to have my flagpole removed. The reasoning exceeds height limitations. Same flagpole I'd had for years. Same one no one cared about until I became visible. It was never about rules. It was about reminding me I didn't belong. Evelyn was furious when I told her. This is retaliation, she said. We can fight this. But I paused, because for once I didn't want to fight. I wanted to reveal. So I invited every neighbor I could. Veterans, families, reporters, children. I held a community potluck on my front lawn beneath the flag they were trying to erase. I grilled burgers. Marcus played music from a speaker. Kids played cornhole on the driveway. Laughter floated up into the branches like a second national anthem. And then I stood on my porch. Y'all came to eat, I said. But I got something else to offer truth. I held up the letter from the HOA. This is what they're doing now. Trying to shrink me down to a regulation. But this pole, this flag, doesn't just belong to me anymore. It belongs to every single person who refuses to be silenced again. Applause, cheers, then a voice from the back. I served too, you know. It was Ted Ellison, Vietnam vet. I hadn't seen him in years. Rumor was he kept to himself after losing his son in Iraq. He stepped forward, holding a photograph. This is my boy. Died in Fallujah. And that flag gave me something to hold on to. So no, they won't touch yours. Not without touching all of ours. That was the moment the street changed. Permanently. Over the next few weeks, flagpoles started sprouting on lawns like spring flowers. Some had folded triangle flags framed beside them. Others had family dog tags hanging on them. One even had a mural painted below it of me. I told them not to. They did it anyway. But something else happened too. Neighbors began telling their own stories. A woman named Louisa told the news she'd been fined $500 last year for a garden gnome violating HOA decorum. But she suspected it was because of her accent. A retired black teacher admitted she stopped putting up Christmas lights because Carol once told her they were too loud. A single mother revealed how her application to build a wheelchair ramp for her disabled daughter was denied twice for aesthetic reasons. They'd all been swallowing injustices, but now they were spitting them out. It was like watching dominoes fall, only these weren't toppling into silence. They were rising into courage. Evelyn held a community forum at the local library, and for the first time in Elmwood's history, residents elected their HOA board no more self-appointed reign. Guess who they voted in as vice chair? Susan Markham. And then, weeks later, the final twist. I received a certified letter from Easy Box Express. No, not another settlement offer. An apology, signed by the CEO himself. They had reviewed company culture. Fired not just Jason, but 5 managers who circulated the video. Instituted a veteran respect training program nationwide called the Boone Protocol. I stared at the letter stunned. Not because they finally admitted fault, but because they finally admitted truth. That night, Marcus brought his camera again. "Last shot, Mr. Boone," he said. "Everyone's asking for a message. Something real." I sat on the porch medals on my chest flag at my back, and I spoke. "I'm not a hero. I'm not a victim. I'm just a man who refused to bow. I didn't want attention. I wanted dignity. And when it was taken, I stood back up not for me, but for everyone who's ever been made small on their own street." He clicked the camera off. "Perfect," he said. Later, I walked to the edge of the lawn. A cool breeze lifted the flag. I looked up. It didn't flap in defiance. It danced in remembrance. And in every home down the block a light flicked on. No more closed curtains. No more whispered regrets. Just the sound of a community breathing again. Together. They thought they could bury it. Scrub it clean. Redefine it. Twist the truth into a version that fit their narrative, one where I was a disgruntled old man who misunderstood a young worker. They thought if enough time passed, people would forget. And if they couldn't make people forget, they'd rewrite the ending. I found out when a new HOA bulletin appeared in my mailbox, freshly printed, sealed in a crisp white envelope with the HOA logo at the top. No return address, no signature. Inside was a letter titled, "Restoring Unity in Elmwood," a message to our neighbors. And in it they told a different story. They said the incident had been overblown by outsiders, that it was a moment of miscommunication, that certain individuals had taken advantage of a misunderstanding to sow division. No names, but I didn't need them. I could feel the target on my back like a second skin. I stood on my porch, the letter in one hand, my cane in the other. Across the street, Susan Markham saw me. She walked over, brows furrowed. "You get one of these?" she asked, holding up the same envelope. I nodded. "So did half the neighborhood," she said. "Some of them are calling it damage control. Others think it's a quiet way to make you look like a liar." She looked me in the eye. "What do you want to do, Elijah?" I didn't answer. Not yet. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with Marcus and Evelyn. We spread the letter on the table, reading every word like it was a contract designed to erase everything we'd fought for. "This is narrative warfare," Evelyn said. "They can't win in court, so they're trying to win in memory." Marcus nodded. "They're hoping people move on. They're counting on time doing their job for them." But then he leaned forward, a fire in his eyes. "So, let's make it impossible to forget." We got to work the next morning. Evelyn filed a complaint with the Fair Housing Commission, citing the letter as further proof of a hostile pattern of retaliation. Marcus started a community podcast, The Elmwood Files: Truth from the Porch. Neighbors submitted testimonials. Veterans recorded their own stories. Even Louisa, the woman with the fined garden gnome, told her story on camera with tears in her eyes and truth on her lips. And me? I started writing a book. Not long, not fancy. Just pages filled with names, dates, and the quiet moments between pain and strength. Porch Wars, a veteran's stand against silence. It started selling online faster than we expected. Within a month, it was featured on a national morning show. And when they interviewed me live, I said, I didn't ask to become a symbol. I just asked to be seen. They thought I'd vanish once the cameras left. But I'm still here, and I'll keep telling the truth no matter how many times they try to rewrite it. Then came the school invitation. A teacher from the local high school reached out Ms. Tucker. She taught history and wanted me to speak to her senior class. Said they were studying civil rights, but the students didn't understand how modern injustice still plays out in real neighborhoods. I wore my uniform jacket, carried my cane, and walked into that classroom like I was 20 again, marching into unknown territory with nothing but purpose in my chest. I didn't lecture. I didn't preach. I told them what happened. I showed them the video. I let them hear Jason's voice unfiltered. I let them hear mine. Then I paused, and I asked, "What would you have done if you saw it happen?" The room was silent. Then a girl in the back raised her hand. I would have filmed it. Another raised his hand. I would have helped pick up the medals. Another whispered I would have said something. I nodded slowly. "Then you're already braver than most adults I know." After the class, Ms. Tucker hugged me. "You changed them," she said. But I smiled and corrected her. They changed me. A few days later, a package arrived. No label, no company name. Just a handwritten note inside. It read, "Mr. Boone, I was one of the HOA members who voted to fine you. I went along with Carol because I was scared to speak up. But your courage showed me what silence costs. Please accept this small gesture." Anonymous. Inside the box was a carved wooden sculpture, an eagle with its wings wrapped around a folded flag. I sat there staring at it, speechless. It wasn't over. There were still whispers, still subtle retaliations, still fences that stayed too tall. But the momentum had shifted. We weren't just reacting anymore. We were reclaiming. Then, as if fate hadn't stirred the pot enough, Jason Milner resurfaced. Not on a street, not in a courtroom, but on a live stream, a viral one. He was sitting in his car, face weary, eyes sunken, and he said, "I messed up. Bad. I disrespected a man who deserved better. I let my anger and ignorance become a weapon. I was raised better than that. Mr. Boone, if you're watching this, I'm sorry." The comments poured in. Some forgave him. Some condemned him. Some argued in circles as the internet always does. But me, I sat quietly watching him speak, trying to see past the man who'd thrown the box to the man who might have finally learned. And I realized something. He couldn't rewrite the past. But maybe, just maybe, he was trying to stop running from it. That night I wrote him back. Just 3 sentences. "Jason, you hurt me. But owning it is the first brick in rebuilding a better man." Elijah Boone. I never hit send. Not yet. But I saved it. Because the truth, it was already loud enough. The flag doesn't make a sound. Not like thunder, not like gunfire, not like a man yelling across a courtroom. But on the morning of Memorial Day, as I stood on my porch and watched it rise with the sunrise, I swear to God, I heard it cry, not out loud, but in the way it moved, slow, heavy, like it remembered every hand that ever folded it over a coffin. And suddenly I wasn't alone on that porch. I was standing shoulder to shoulder with ghosts. My wife used to say holidays like this make people uncomfortable, because remembrance requires us to feel something deeper than guilt. She was right. That morning, as I lowered my head for the moment of silence, I didn't just remember the men I lost in the jungle. I remembered the moment a box hit my chest in broad daylight, the silence that followed, and the storm that came after. But today was different. Because this Memorial Day, I wasn't a name in a news clip. I was the keynote speaker at the city's memorial service. I stood at the podium in front of a crowd that stretched past the gates of Liberty Park. Thousands. Flags waving like waves on the sea. And behind me, etched in stone, were the names of every local veteran who never made it home. My voice shook as I began, not because of fear, but because I knew what this moment meant. "My name is Elijah Boone," I said. "I fought in a war overseas, and then I came home to fight another one in silence. I didn't lose my leg. I didn't lose my eyesight. But I lost something just as heavy my place. I thought being a veteran meant I'd earned it, that I wouldn't have to justify my presence on a front porch, that no one would ever question whether I deserved to be here. I paused. The crowd leaned in. But then, one day, a package hit my chest harder than any bullet. Not because of what it weighed, but because of what it meant. I told them everything. The throw, the video, the boy with the phone, the insults, the silence, and then the roar. I didn't cry, but I let my voice break, because sometimes breaking is the most honest thing you can do. When I finished, no one clapped right away. They stood, still, heads bowed. Then one man, an amputee in full dress uniform, lifted his hand in salute. And just like that, the entire crowd did the same. Thousands of hands, thousands of memories. One soundless roar of respect. Later that day, something else happened. I got a call from a woman named Camille Banks, an executive producer from a national broadcast network. She said, "Mr. Boone, we're producing a documentary. It's called The Other War, and we want to center it around your story." I didn't know what to say. "I'm just a man with a porch and a memory," I told her. "No," she said. "You're a reminder, and the nation needs reminders more than ever." Filming began 2 weeks later. They came to my home with cranes and lights and questions that cracked open parts of me I didn't even know were still sore. "Did you ever feel like giving up?" "Yes." When they accused Marcus of violating privacy. When they tried to take down my flagpole. When they rewrote the HOA bulletin like I was the problem. But I didn't, because every time I looked in the mirror, I saw my younger self, mud-covered, scared, 17 years old, gripping a rifle in a foreign land and wondering if I'd ever see home again. He didn't give up, so neither could I. One segment of the documentary featured a sit-down conversation. Me, Marcus, Jason Milner. Yes, him. They asked if I would speak with him. They said he wanted to apologize. In person. I wrestled with it. For hours. Then I said yes, because I needed closure. Not for the world. For myself. When Jason arrived, he looked 10 years older than the day he threw that box. No uniform. No swagger. Just a man. Trying to carry his shame. He didn't shake my hand right away. He sat across from me, eyes low. Then he spoke. "Mr. Boone, I didn't just throw a package that day. I threw away my own humanity. I didn't say a word." He continued. "I grew up thinking people like you were just background noise. Decorations on a parade route. Statues in a park. But you're alive, and I made you feel less than that. I'm sorry." I studied him, long and hard. Then I asked, "What made you change?" He paused, looked me in the eyes. "You did." I stood, walked over, and shook his hand. Not because I forgot, not because I absolved, but because he remembered. And that mattered. The documentary aired 2 months later. Titled "The Porch That Refused to Stay Silent." It broke streaming records. Teachers assigned it in classrooms. Veteran groups screened it at fundraisers. And at the very end, the final frame lingered on my flag. No words, no music, just the sound of wind moving through fabric. And in that silence, the whole nation finally listened. The mailman waved at me now, not out of obligation, not because of my veteran cap, but because he knew my name. "Elijah," he called out one morning, handing me a package. No more tosses, I promise. We both chuckled. There was warmth in it. Not the forced smile of guilt, but the comfort of respect, hard-earned and harder kept. I looked down at the box this time, handled with care. The return address read Washington, D.C., Department of Veterans Affairs. Inside an invitation, they were unveiling a new memorial in the Capitol. A tribute not just to veterans of war, but to those who fought for dignity when they came home. They called it the Circle of Return, and they asked me to speak at the dedication. I stared at the paper until my fingers trembled. Me, a man who once lived in silence, whose name was left out of neighborhood directories and holiday party lists, was now being etched into the heart of the nation. I told Marcus first. He nearly dropped his camera. "We have to go big," he said. "You're not just a symbol now, you're a voice, a living reminder." So we did. The day we traveled to D.C., the whole block came out. Banners, flags, children lining the sidewalks with homemade posters that read, "Safe because of Boone. Silence ends with us porch power." Marcus filmed it all. Even Susan Markham wiped a tear when she hugged me goodbye. Come back and tell us everything she said. But more than that, go there and stand tall. D.C. was cold that morning. The sky was pewter gray, the kind that made monuments look like ancient guardians. The new memorial gleamed in stone and steel 24 panels engraved with quotes from veterans across generations. One of them read, "I did not survive war to be forgotten in peace." Elijah Boone. I almost couldn't breathe. The crowd was massive. Veterans from every branch, every background. Students, families, reporters, senators, strangers. And behind them a mural hung tall and proud. It showed me on my porch. Cane in hand. Flag above. Eyes forward. And beneath it, the porch that refused to bow became a platform that lifted us all. When I took the podium, I didn't bring a script. Didn't need one. I looked at the sea of faces and spoke from the place no one could touch my truth. I used to think dignity was something you were given, I said. A medal, a salute, a thank you for your service kind of thing. But I learned that dignity isn't given. It's fought for. Again and again. I was just a man on a porch, trying to receive a package with peace. Instead, I received pain. But pain can be a powerful teacher. I paused. Let the silence settle. I didn't raise my voice that day because I wanted fame. I raised it because silence was killing me faster than time ever could. People cried. I did too. Finally. Tears I hadn't let fall since the jungle. Tears Irene once held for me when I couldn't. Tears for every friend who never came home. Tears for every insult absorbed with clenched teeth. And then I smiled, because I wasn't just remembering anymore. I was rebuilding. After the ceremony, a young girl, maybe 10, ran up to me with a notebook. She said, "Can I ask a question?" Of course, I said. If someone treats me wrong because of how I look or where I'm from, what should I do? I knelt down, old bones protesting, but heart full. You stand, I said. Even if your voice shakes, you stand. Because truth doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be real. Back home, life didn't go back to normal, because normal had been the problem. Instead, something better grew in its place. The HOA rewrote their bylaws with full community votes. The aesthetic violations list was gutted. Veterans in the area formed a community task force to support others facing discrimination. A plaque was placed outside my home. Not just in my name, but in honor of every voice that once trembled but chose to speak. Marcus's podcast hit over 1 million subscribers. He got accepted into a journalism program in New York. The day he left, he hugged me tight. "You gave me my voice," he said. "No," I replied. "You recorded mine, and in doing so, reminded me it still mattered." As for Jason, he volunteered with a veteran assistance program. He called once a month. not to clear his conscience, but to listen. And every time he did, I forgave him just a little more. Not because forgetting is easy, but because letting go makes space for better things. One autumn afternoon, I sat on my porch again. Same spot, same wind, same flag. Only this time, I wasn't alone. A group of kids from the high school history class came by for a project. They asked questions, took notes. One even drew a sketch of me, cane and all. They called me a living landmark. I laughed and said, "Don't carve me in stone yet. I still got things to say." And I do. Because this isn't just a story about a package or a porch. It's a story about place, about standing where you were told to sit, about speaking when they hoped you'd stay quiet, about turning injustice into ignition, and above all, about how even the smallest porch can become a beacon when it refuses to dim its light. In the end, it wasn't about a package. It wasn't even about the medals. It was about something deeper being seen, being respected, and being heard. Elijah Boone didn't go looking for justice. Justice found him when he refused to bow his head in silence. His porch became a symbol. His voice became a rallying cry. And his story became a reminder that dignity is not something given. It's something we must stand for, even when our legs shake. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel for more powerful true dramas that awaken courage and compassion. Comment below. Have you ever witnessed quiet injustice? Have you ever seen someone stand up against it, even when the odds were against them? Share this video to remind the world. Sometimes it only takes one voice on one porch to change a street, a town, and even a nation, because silence may be comfortable, but truth is louder.